We are on the verge of seeing a major proposal from INEC that could redefine Nigeria's electoral process. Well, let's tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is pushing for a legal framework to permit voting without permanent voters' cards, PVCs. This bold move has sparked intense debate across the country, with Nigerians asking if this move is really the future of voting in Nigeria or recipe for chaos. Joining us this morning to share his expert opinion on this development is the Advocacy Officer and ECOWAS Liaison Lead, West African Democracy Solidarity Network, WADEMOS, Mr. Austin Aigbe. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Aigbe, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central. Now, this announcement came as a shocker to many Nigerians. First of all, I would like to know what your take is. Some of the opinion that this might lead to widespread rigging and also identity theft. What do you make of this announcement, of this decision, or this proposal rather?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much again for having me. I think Nigeria are being skeptical because of the trust deficit within the electoral management body and of course the electoral management system. Well, it is not a breaking news. I mean, the conversation started a few months ago, about 2-3 months when INEC proposed the total removal of the printing of INEC is not removing PVC from voting. And removing the PD cards that you print and people go to INEC offices to then pick up those hard cards. So this is it, which is a very fantastic point that INEC has done. And I say this for people who know me, I will say it the way it is. This is a good proposal, and Nigerians should take it. What does it talk? What does this mean? In 2022, during the Ekiti and Osun elections, I observed, personally, during the course of observation, I observed that we don't truly need a PVC card to vote. What you need is an identification and not the hard card that INEC spent huge sum of money to produce. And if you go around the country, every election, you will see media, including yours, going to INEC offices and seeing a stack of PVC cards not connected. Some we see, inside a few years ago, we saw how some cards were buried and some people, while they were sweeping, found them. And all of those information, misinformation, disinformation that follow PVC card, we can truly stop it. The truth of the matter is, with a biometric system, what you need is an identification that you are registered in this polling unit or that polling unit. With your VIN number is the most important at this time. With your VIN number, you can truly vote. Like I told you, during that Ekiti and Osun election, I observed in two occasions, a presiding officer who was doing the electronic accreditation, when the voters came with their PVC, he just looked at it, entered the number. I'm not too sure the number he entered. I mean, how many number he entered? I'm too sure he entered up to 6 digits. Most likely the last 6 digits of the VIN number. The image, the biometric of the voter pops up on the screen to validate that that voter is the owner of that card. That's where you now do the fingerprint authentication or the facial recognition. Once a voter passes those 2 stages, that is it. The card is just for mere recognition. We can go without the hard card. Again, I repeat, hard card. INEC is not saying you will not come to the polling unit with your cards. What this means, I mean, this is the hard card I'm talking about. What INEC is saying that you have a responsibility to go online and print your own PVC. It doesn't have to be a hard card.
In summary, Mr. Aigbe, are you saying the benefits outweighs the disadvantages, and we will be saving a lot of money in the long run?
Exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that you don't For instance, I'm sure that, I don't know, let me not pass another fake news, but let me just use an example. That both of you on the screen, because of your schedule, the time for PVC collection is somehow an Ukrainian tax that it is almost difficult for you to leave your station to go pick up your PVC. And that is why many of us have not been able to pick up our PVCs. INEC is now saying, you don't need it. Go online at the comfort of your home or at workplace, you print out your PVC. There's an additional advantage that it provides. You can change your location. A month to election, like INEC will advise, change, transfer of polling unit and all of that, you can change it online and still print it, provided you do it at the material time that it is registered in the new polling unit that you want to then move to. At the end of the day, INEC Nigerians would have been saving money by reducing the number of hours, human personnel hours, that stay for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the ward level, then to the local government level during the collection of PVC. We don't need that route anymore. Now, with electronic means, digitalization of our process would have been saving a lot of money. Beyond the PVC, I'm asking INEC to also do away with the ballot papers. For me, that is even a more important cost saving.
And that's a very valid argument, Mr. Aigbe, because the truth is we should be moving on with joining the world. We should be moving on to a paperless system where we're joining the world in keeping up with global best practices. But with the current level of our digital infrastructure, judging that even from the last elections, many people found it difficult to be verified. Many people would take pictures of, and even at my polling unit, I could see that there were people that they would try to verify them, visually try to verify them with fingerprints, and it wasn't working. So how do we guarantee that with the current digital infrastructure that we have, this would not be another system that would fail and people would come and still not be able to get verified?
So you see, the truth of the matter is, if you back it up with the law, it has become mandatory for INEC to make it happen. All the things you saw previously with failure infrastructure, tech infrastructure, is as a result of INEC's innovation, which really doesn't have some form of legal backing. I mean, the Supreme Court has told us that INEC innovation are mere innovations and they are not sacrosanct. And that is why it is almost difficult to argue your point in court when you try to argue around the BVAS machine, as it were. And you, of course, your media also reported how the court undermined some of those INEC internal rules, which were put in place for the good governance of elections. For instance, if a court says that don't talk about BVAS here, what you need to talk about is to argue substantially non-compliance at the polling unit. What that means is that political parties must argue based on the relevance at the polling unit and not to generalize. And that is why when some people loses in court, like a do election, people argue. And I say, but the court has made this comment consistently that you must prove beyond reasonable doubt non-compliance, substantial non-compliance. And substantial non-compliance has to do with polling unit.
Hello, Mr. Aigbe. Are you still there with us?
Okay, it seems that we might be having challenges. We've been speaking with Austin Aigbe, who is the Advocacy Officer and ECOWAS Liaison Lead West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, WADEMOS, and he's been speaking to us about INEC's proposal regarding the next elections, that they're proposing that we have voting without the physical PVC. So when you hear voting without PVC, people automatically assume that that means they're not going to have PVCs at all. However, it's going to be digital now. You just have your voter identification number, you go there, they verify you with your number, and you can go ahead with your voting.
And rightly so. I recall his opening statement. He said trust deficit. Because once people saw this news, alarm bells went haywire, and everybody's like, oh, what's going to happen? Are they using that? And then following our discussion this morning, he explained that, look, the BVAS system still has layers of verification, so it doesn't mean it's just, it might save us time, and it's a more efficient system. But I'm looking forward. I believe Mr. Aigbe is back. He made a proposal, and I'm sure Elon Musk could be very proud, a very technologically driven, advanced proposal about paperless ballots. So can you walk us through this, and what do you envisage? You said that there's a possibility that we could even imbibe a system of voting without paper ballots. Could you share your thoughts with us, please? Mr. Aigbe. Okay.
And this is, still the technology that we're going to use.
Yes, these are the challenges. I mean, we're just only trying to have a conversation, and imagine how, if you have to verify thousands of people and millions.
And just to say that I agree with that. I think that is a fantastic idea, because we shouldn't in 2025, okay, then it will be 2027. We're going to elections and you're having your PVCs. People vote from their houses, abroad. You don't have to go to a physical ballot.
But to put up all this infrastructure, Starlink services, Elon Musk, for example, that work in remote areas and connect directly with satellite would cost a lot of money if INEC has to deploy Starlink services, for example, to all nooks and crannies of Nigeria. So we stop having connection issues like this and network challenges, and we have seamless operations.
I mean, there are people that barely vote.
Our elections are very expensive. Democracy is a very expensive process, but it's the price we have to pay for good governance and freedoms that we enjoy today as Nigerians. So some will argue that no cost is too high for our elections, but we can also streamline the process, use technology to reduce cost. Do you know how much those PVCs cost? The numbers, the sheer volume you have to print.
And then part of why we couldn't even start, excuse me, we can't even start elections early in some polling units is because these materials have to be dispatched on the day of the election. So some of them would then go to their local government to collect the materials at 8 a.m., sensitive materials, and then that's when we're seeing the likelihood of, manipulation.
Like he said, I mean, we have different schedules. What time would you have to go pick up your PVC? And if you don't have a PVC, you can vote. It disenfranchises you. So if there's a system that allows you to print and present it with all your...
And even vote anywhere, because my polling unit is in VI.
Yes.
Then I will come to Ikeja to do my show. When will I finish and go and join the
there's always no movement. So, but you have the luxury of being a journalist, so you're exempted. But let's talk to Mr. Aigbe. Mr. Aigbe is back. I was going to ask you about a suggestion you made earlier about a paperless voting. How is this possible, and what does it envisage? You need to connect with your audio, please.
Okay. Hello.
Yes. Yes. The irony of discussing technology and
exactly, we're having technological challenges, and we're looking at using technology to fast track our voting systems.
I like, but this is not technology. This is internet. So there are two different things.
Yeah, it's still the
internet is also part of tech.
No, there are two different things, because I tried, even the proposal about electronic voting is not internet voting. There's a difference between electronic voting and internet voting. So what the BVAS does is that the information is preloaded on the machine you are going to use. It's like your phone. When you have a name stored on your phone, I'm not going to talk about some phone model where you store more than one name, it's difficult to pop up. When you have a name stored on your phone, it is easy to find it than Googling that same name. So what the kind of tech we have today in Nigeria is not the kind of blockchain technology. In fact, you don't even need it for the Nigerian election if that would cause a problem. For those who appear at the polling unit to vote and their fingerprint is unable to verify, it is truly possible that those voters are the owners, and it's also possible that they are not the owners. And they could then put some form of back-end channel to deal with that kind of issue. For instance, asking the relevant question, ask the voter, what's your age? Because the age is in the back end. What's your address? The address is on the back end. That is the model we use in Sierra Leone. In the Sierra Leone election, where the voter's name is not a ballot, the register, it goes through a process like we used to have the incidence form in Nigeria that we criticized at that time because of the too many challenges eventually popped up. You ask the voter, what's your age? What's your mother's name? Those information that are not visible on the card. Once the voter goes through and he passes it, you clear the voter. However, it is always good to look at the positive externality against, and you measure that against the negative externality. I am saying, in this case, that even though 1 million people show up to vote, and of that number, 200 was unable to be verified, I am saying it's a positive externality than the huge amount of money that we use to print these hard cards that are not used. We need to weigh those options and then take a decision. I'm of the opinion that saving costs, even though, in quotes, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, 5, 10 persons are unable to be verified, it is actually possible that those are not the owners of the card. But INEC can put a back end to check it.
All right. I mean, you have talked about what this would look like. But before, as we count down to elections, whilst there are still, a number has elections, for example, in November, we have our elections in 2027. What are some of the changes that you think should be implemented as we count down to the elections?
There have been a number of proposals, for instance, early voting for essential workers, media, military folks involved with electoral duties, observers. Maybe that number may be, let's say about 10 million, which is actually less. I'm exaggerating at this time. But the proposal for that early vote, I have a problem with it. Coming from Ghana's election of December 2024, where the system had long time been using early voting. In the Ghana 2024 election, less than 140,000 voters registered to vote early. Of a population of voters, registered voters of 18 million plus, the contribution of early voters in the Ghana election was less than 1%. New voters, new registrants to vote, had about 7%. Rather than looking at early vote, clean up the electoral system, improve the trust. I repeat, the trust deficit in INEC conducting an election is a big challenge. Will I say the biggest challenge? Underneath that conversation is the manner in which INEC leadership are appointed. How the INEC chair is appointed, the commissioners are appointed, and how INEC make rules for election. And suddenly, we have moved from polling units to court units. Deciding election now, it is no longer at the polling unit. It is now at the court unit, which is a very weird scenario for us as a country. So voters are tired. Why do I need to vote at the polling unit and then the courts need to decide my vote? You can say that by way of justice, yes, it is okay. But if you look at what has happened historically in Nigeria, here's someone who came out number 4, became number 1, sends a wrong signal to the electorate. Beyond that, we have seen a number of judgments that has weakened the voting population quest to turn out to vote. Beyond early vote, if we must do early vote, we must, as a matter of fact, begin to introduce electronic voting with a paper trail to follow. What do I mean? When a voter comes to vote, if he's voting early, a voter registered as an early voter, that voter is given a polling unit specifically where the voter will go and vote. And appearing there, once it displays the card or something that INEC would have issued or sent by mail with a QR code that can be scanned, the voter is allowed to vote and move out immediately. The voter doesn't need to stay there. If it's a police officer or the military guys who are assigned to a particular area, you assign to them the closest polling unit. And that voter can vote electronically, not by ballot paper.
All right.
So that's my only position. So I can reduce the pressure. There'll be proposal for a one-day election to reduce costs. I am saying that proposal will not solve the idea of voters turnout. It will further complicate our electoral system because we run on the day of vote, we have the president, the Senate, the House of Representatives, the governors in majority of states, the House of Assembly, those 5 elections. By the time you include the FCT election that is being proposed to also happen the same day, that would mean 6 elections. And in the 6 elections, you have the area council and then you have the councillors. If one polling unit is going to have that in one day, it will be catastrophic.
Right.
I repeat,
I mean,
catastrophic.
This is quite an argument that, you know, many have gone back and forth with, you know, regarding whether or not we should have one-day voting. But I'm sure that we've not seen the end of the conversation, but we appreciate your thoughts on the subject matter. And we hope that we can see a number of these suggestions taken into consideration even as we count down to elections. Thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.